Hi everybody, it's Lauren Ohayon from Restore Your Core, and in today's video I want to teach you how to do a test for diastasis recti. My medical disclaimer is that this is not medical advice, and if you suspect you have a diastasis, ideal is that you go and have it checked out by a professional. However, a lot of us are wanting to figure it out sooner than later, so you can do this test just to get your baseline if you suspect that there is something going on. Let's talk a little bit about the varying degrees of diastasis, what you are looking for, and what is going on in your body anatomically. So what is a diastasis? A diastasis is when the abdominal wall has separated. What does that even mean? My abdominal wall has separated. That sounds crazy. So running up and down your abdominal, the center line here is a tissue called the linea alba. Okay, this linea alba is connective tissue. So the muscles, the abdominal wall, are wrapping around and connecting right into that. So here's my abdominal wall. The six-pack is the rectus abdominis six-pack is what we're talking about here. And those muscle fibers run up and down. So they're going to attach into this abdominal, this linea alba here in the middle. Now what happens when we are pregnant or even not pregnant, when we, in any situation, right, where a diastasis can happen, what ends up happening is nothing happens to this muscle. What happens occurs in this tissue. So this tissue starts to spread out and stretch out and thin. So whereas the tissue was kind of here in the center and tight and everything was connected to it, now it's stretching thin, stretching. And so this is a normal occurrence in pregnancy, of course. So, and what happens is the abdominal muscles go along with it. So where I'm not going to hold two six-packs, but imagine that you have one here and one here. And so when this tissue starts to stretch, you can imagine that in the center now, you don't have this tight, compact wall of muscle, right? So if I had two of these, one on either side, then they would come right into the tissue itself. As that tissue stretches and spreads for a variety of reasons, the muscles separate. So that's why it's called abdominal separation. The separation is that the muscles in the front, the rectus abdominis, are separating. Hence, you might have this feeling of a hole in your abdominal area and feels like your abdominal wall lacks the support that it used to. Activities like getting up from the ground or I don't know, pole dancing. Do you pole dance? So activities where you really would feel your core before, picking up a baby, pushing a stroller, like opening a heavy door, suddenly it's like, God, something's not happening, right? And so let's talk about the test now. So the tissue, for a moment, let's go back to this. The tissue can, as this happens, this stretching can be shallow, it can be wide, it can be narrow, and it can be deep. Now, generally speaking, the diastasis recti, when you have that separation, the more deep it is, the more challenging it is to close the gap, to resolve the injury, especially for final closure. You can have a 1 or 2 finger diastasis, but it's very deep. And that could be harder to resolve than a 5-finger, and I'll show you what the fingers mean in a minute, than a 5-finger diastasis that is super shallow. And so a 5-finger that's very shallow can be much easier to bring back together. So if you're finding frustration and you're like, I don't understand because my diastasis is only a few fingers, if it's very deep, that's what's going on. Also, the tissue around your navel is more circular in nature and it will be the last to close and it might never fully close. So don't stress about that either. Now, we're going to test our abdominal wall in 3 places: below the navel, at the navel, and above the navel. And you might find that it's different in each place you test. When you put your fingers on your abdominals, you're going to put your fingers on your abdominals like this. Okay, so not in this up and down orientation, but this way so that you can measure how many fingers across you are. You're going to come to lie on your back. bending your knees, your feet are gonna be on the floor, and you are going to first just touch up and down that center line tissue. And you might feel squish, right? Because this area is designed to be soft, but you're just feeling. When I am working with a client and I am feeling their abdominal wall, I'm also just looking to see if there are areas where my fingers just kind of dive in even when they are at rest. So you're just checking out what does your tissue feel like? Okay, now what you're going to do is go below your navel. So find your belly button, go below your navel, place your fingers like I showed you, and all I want you to do is lift your head a few inches off the floor and allow your abdominals to contract. Now, if when you lift your head a few inches off the floor, you suck your belly in like this, you won't be able to test your diastasis, and you might feel like, oh, there's nothing going on there. So you want your abdominal wall to contract. Now, this is your abdominal wall. So when you lift up, you should feel hard tissue in the center. If your fingers dive into a hole, you might start to feel this outer ridge of the abdominal wall. So depending on how separated your abdominals are, you might be able to feel the ridges of your abdominal muscles here. And that's okay. That's just where your muscles are right now. So the tissue's pretty stretched out. So you come, let's go below the navel. We lift up an inch. We feel the abdominal wall contract. I should be able to push into a wall here, okay? There's no hole for me. There's no separation right here. Okay, great. Okay, and so again, you're just feeling if you go into a hole, measure it with your fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. I've had clients I've worked with who have 10 finger separations. Okay, now you go to your belly button, same thing. Lift your head off the floor a few inches, feel your abdominal wall contract, and notice if there's a hole. And again, place your fingers this way, see how wide that is. It's going to be hard for you to determine how deep it is. This is why a professional is a great idea, because they feel abdominal walls all day long. They know, they can tell you what is what relative to the abdominal wall. So then you just keep going up, testing at different spots, noticing, and you might be shocked to find that the tissue feels really different below and high and above. And that is exactly how you test for a diastasis recti. It is not about coming up very high into the crunch. You're lifting your head and shoulders up very minimally until your abdominal wall starts to contract. When it's doing that contraction, that's when you can test the muscles. So you're not trying to do a good contraction where you keep your abdominal wall corseted in. You are attempting to do a crunch using your six-pack so you can feel where is the ridge of the abdominal wall. So can you again, when there's no separation, this feels like taut tissue. When there's a separation, your fingers start to sink in more and more. And I'm not talking about sink in like this. This is just abdominal fat. My fingers are sinking into my abdominal fat. But right beneath my abdominal fat, there's a wall of tissue there. And that's what we're looking to feel. That is the best way to feel. I hope you understand also the anatomy of your core wall, because understanding your body is the absolute best way for you to begin to heal your body. As always, ask me any questions in the comments or send me a message or a DM or an email and let me know what questions you have.